Well, welcome everybody. My name is Dana Moore. I am the vice chair of the Lyon County DFL, and I reached out to Sheriff Wallen a couple weeks ago, as well as the Lyon County GOP, to possibly have a meeting to discuss the issue of signs and the political campaigns, as we're getting into the heat here of the political election season here for 2020. And just thought it might be a good idea to come together and kind of give some statements about how we feel about the issue of vandalism or theft of signs and different things like that connected to the election season. So once again, I'm very grateful that Sheriff Wallen was kind enough to host this meeting and to have this meeting, so we have the voice of law enforcement with this issue. So,
thank you.
Yes.
I don't have an official statement, but I understand we have some questions as well. You guys have?
Well, I saw a list of questions that the media had, so maybe we should go through questions first.
Sure.
Certainly. Should we introduce everybody?
Yeah, do that. Sure.
So I'm Eric Wallen, Lyon County Sheriff.
Dana Moore, Lyon County DFL.
I am Debbie Clark, one of the co-chairs for Lyon County Republicans.
I am Anita Gall, and I'm the chair of the Lyon County DFL.
I'm Will French, and I'm co-chair with the Lyon County Republicans.
Approximately how many signs are vandalized in Lyon County roughly each election cycle? How big of a problem is this?
You guys have current numbers this year?
We have, I think, I don't think it's a real formal or official count, but we discuss once or twice a week. We'll say, oh, I heard so-and-so signs were stolen, or so-and-so's house was vandalized, or whatever, their property. It's been a while since I've heard numbers, but I know kind of maybe mid-July I was hearing on the DFL side that we had at least a dozen people who had lost their signs or had them stolen, apparently, that the signs were missing from their property. I've heard of more since then, but I couldn't give you an exact number, but it's been several. So.
Yeah, I don't know an exact number either, but we get reports all the time and people coming back into the office saying, my signs were stolen, can I get more signs? It's really been ongoing, July through August, yeah.
Yeah, and I would support those statements. It's been an issue. A lot of people don't call law enforcement when their signs are vandalized or stolen. They seem to call the candidate or the affiliated party to get new signs, but we do encourage that you do call your local law enforcement, whether it's the city police or our office, depending on your jurisdiction, because it is a theft or damage of property crime that should be investigated.
That's good to know, because that's what we've been telling people to do,
Yep.
is to file a police report. Do you do the same, Debbie?
I haven't, but I will now, yeah.
Yep, it's a good thing because there's a lot of times people have technology now, security cameras, Ring doorbells, etc., that is very helpful in trying to track down who the culprits are. So encourage them to call.
Has the hostile political environment, that so-called hostile political environment, has that make an appearance that it's bigger problem than past?
I didn't understand your question.
Well, I guess, nowadays it's described as a hostile political environment.
Oh,
Has that anything to do with, it seems like there's more signs being stolen now than in the past because of that, or is it just an appearance type thing?
I don't know. I know it's always, every election cycle is a problem.
Yeah.
Is it more so now than maybe? Maybe if there's more signs put up, then you get more signs stolen,
That goes without saying. If you have more out there, the chances are
Yeah.
more will likely be stolen or vandalized. Of the calls our office has received, I can't say that the numbers are increased over years gone by. However, like I said, most of these go unreported, so we really don't know for sure how many are missing or stolen. But of the ones that we have been able to capture people on video, we've found that it's mostly juveniles, kids, neighborhood kids, just doing neighborhood kid type things and messing with yard property. I don't know that there's political motive behind that age group, but to say that it's not an issue, it probably is to some extent with other age groups.
Eric, how do you go about enforcing this?
Well, we try to educate the homeowners and those that have the signs to put them out in a place that is it's going to keep them the safest. Put them up closer to your house to deter people from walking past on the sidewalk and just grabbing them while they're on their bike, or jump out of their car and grab them. You know, if they got to come further into your yard, it might be a deterrent. We'd also say, think about if you do have some type of security system, to place them in a position that it would be captured on that security system if someone does mess with your sign or any type of yard property for that matter. I mean, people have a lot of different yard decorations that get messed with year-round, you know, so keep those in mind. A lot of sign thefts occur at night, so if you have the time, maybe it's beneficial just to take them in at night if you have that opportunity. As far as other enforcement, we encourage people, report any suspicious activity that you see. If you see something, please say something. We're more than happy to investigate any type of suspicious activity that people have. It could be nothing, but that's what we're here for. That's our job, to look into those type matters.
Someone once asked me, is it a good idea to say put their name on the sign somewhere, so that are they ever found? What percentage of signs are ever recovered? Almost any in your experience?
It's a very, very good statement. Yeah, if a homeowner or whoever owns the sign wants to put their name somewhere down on the bottom of it, that is very helpful, so we can return those back to the proper owners. Very few are actually recovered because they are probably a lot of times damaged and disposed of. But we do recover some. I know we recovered some in Lind here a week ago or so, 2 weeks ago. The city of Marshall, I know, has recovered a few, but there are no identifying marks on them to say which house they should go back to. We're unable to do that, so that would be a very helpful thing, yes.
Okay.
Is it possible for the political party that they belong to pick up signs from you so they can be used again if they're not damaged?
Yeah, you have to speak to each department separately. They might have different rules. The signs might be needed as a piece of evidence if we have a suspect that's going to go into the legal system and have a criminal case against them for theft. We're going to probably need to hold on to those for a while as evidence. But if once that's resolved, or if they're just found, like abandoned somewhere, certainly check with your local law enforcement. If they have them, they can certainly return them. Also, a lot of people don't know the rules as far as placing signs along a state highway. The Minnesota Department of Transportation has very specific guidelines. You can't put signs in the right-of-way of a road. And sometimes they get too close to that right-of-way, and the state DOT workers are going to come and take those down. If that's the case, check with your local DOT office. They do hold them for a while, and you can get them back.
Good to know.
What is the cost factor of replacing signs that are stolen or damaged?
Well, since we've been ordering a lot of signs lately, the lawn signs on the wire stand are roughly a value of $10, and the bigger 2x4s, that value is roughly $20. So when you get a dozen signs, that's a lot, a substantial outlay of money. Does it run the same for you, Debbie?
And the 4x8s are, the
Yeah.
4x8 signs are about $40
Yeah.
a piece, so.
And then a lot of those would have additional, work, not a lot of cost, but the work and the legs, if it's rebar, if it's,
Right.
Yeah.
if it's lumber to hold them up, that's a bigger
Yeah.
issue with those, because then you've got to replace that. Whereas the standard signs come with their own stand, so it's another issue if those are damaged.
I would have a question for you. What would be something that a homeowner should not do to try and deter someone from stealing their signs?
What they should not do?
Yeah.
I would discourage anyone from doing anything that's going to cause harm to another person who comes on their property, or damage to another person's vehicle or something like that. You hear stories about that people want to throw out a bunch of nails or something to prevent people from coming on their property. You don't want to do things that are going to damage someone else's property or another person.
Because then they, as a homeowner, could get in trouble, right?
It's possible that you could be liable for some of those injuries that you may cause or damages you may cause. It's possible.
Okay.
Is enforcing this is it a priority? I mean, I know, law enforcement at times stretched pretty thin with caseloads and things. And is enforcing this a priority? Can it be a priority?
Yep, for our office, and I can only speak for the sheriff's office, but this is essentially a theft or a damage to property type crime, and it's going to be treated as any other theft or damage to property. So if someone comes and damages your mailbox, it's going to be the same type of situation. And all of our calls that we respond to, we categorize as a priority response, meaning we're going to respond right away, assuming we have staff available to do that. They're not tied up with an accident or another call. They're going to go immediately. If they're on a break, they're going to clear from their break. They're going to respond to your theft call. And we'll investigate those to the best of our abilities, and it is a priority. So.
That's good to know. I wasn't sure when I told people to file a police report if that's just being sort of pesky or not, or if you found that to be that's kind of a waste of our time. But
No,
that's good to know that.
It's certainly not a waste of our time. We will investigate as far as we can take it. I mean, sometimes you can't go very far with it because a person will come in and say, well, last night or 2 nights ago, my sign was stolen, and that's all we have to work with. We have no suspects or anything to look into. But as long as we have some type of evidence or leads to follow, we'll keep working that case until we can no longer do so.
Okay,
I
good.
kind of have a side question based off of that would kind of be both for you and possibly for Mike from the Independent. Just thinking back in the last couple weeks of looking through the crime reports, I can only think of 1, maybe 2 times where it specifically said a sign was stolen. So if you get a report and it's specific like that, it doesn't just say vandalism, do those automatically get published in the Independent, so people have that awareness of, oh, we see it's trending up, or there hasn't been any in a while, you know what I mean?
I can start with that, and Mike can add in. We basically release or disseminate to the media all of our activity,
Okay.
and then it goes into their hands on where they take it from there.
And I'm telling you the truth, I'm not really sure. Basically, the sheriff just answered that question. We take the information from them,
Okay.
and pretty much as is. So whatever is reported by them, that's what we print.
Okay. Yeah, I was just thinking from one of the first questions of, we know it's minimum a dozen, throughout the season so far, and we're just now getting ready for the home stretch, however you want to look at it here. So my pessimistic side is that it could get worse, and that's part of the reason for this meeting. I certainly don't want that. We want people to respect people's property on all sides. But thinking of what we had, been hearing since we've been hosting our kind of weekly, sign distribution events here in Marshall, that people will come back and say, oh, my sign's gone. We've had some people, the first night they put it up, they come back the next week and they say, my sign's gone, and or all my signs are gone. So just thinking of that I guess it seems like the public's probably not reporting it that much. Back to Anita's point of saying, is that pesky? But that's kind of a side part of what I want this meeting to be, is to, encourage people to, see something, say something, be vigilant, but also trying to promote good civic, responsibility. And if you have people that that might say, well, I'm so passionate about the election that I see that sign and I want to do something to it, to say, no, don't do that. Leave people's stuff alone. Let them express their views in a positive way.
Right, and that's one of the number one things about the country we live in. We have that ability to have choice. And it's only fair that all people that want to be involved can express their opinions and advocate for their choices.
I do want to piggyback a little bit off that. I've noticed a few signs that have obscene words on them on both sides.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering, is there a city ordinance that prevents that? I mean, can we all put up signs with obscenities
there's a-
on? I mean,
Certainly.
I'm not comfortable when my first grader says, "Mom, do you see what that sign says?" And I'm like, oh, I wish they hadn't put that sign up.
Right.
Is there anything we can do about that?
Yeah, actually there is a state statute that when I was researching for this meeting, there is a state statute that prohibits any signage, and I wrote it down, I'll read it here for you. It prohibits signs that contain words or pictures of obscene, indecent, or immoral character. Okay, so that's kind of vague as to what's going to fit into those categories. But I would, if you find one that you feel maybe does, report it to your local law enforcement and have them look into it. The statute is
Okay.
173.15 in Minnesota statute.
Oh, that is good to know, because
Yeah,
I wondered, like, is
that's
there
good to
anything
know.
I can do about that other than knock on their door and say, I find your sign offensive, can you take it down? Yeah, okay.
I'm gonna take that one step further though, if I could, because to me, at least in the last, I don't know, 4 or 8 years, it seems like our level of divide has increased. And so I want to know from political parties, do you believe we have gotten toxic? Has our political system gotten toxic? Because if that's the case, and we think some of these might be political, or we're worried some of these might be political, the underlying cause might be the behaviors and the opinions that are being held in these respective political parties.
Guess I'll speak to that first. Yes, I do believe it's gotten more toxic, where there seems to be hate against other people just for being of the different political party. So here's an example. Every Tuesday night in Marshall, we have our DFL pop-up tent, and we set it up on East College Drive. And we keep track of the amount of insults that are hurled at us, the number of middle fingers that are extended to us, the number of people who yell F Biden or something like that, you know, using expletives. And we're just sitting there. You know, it's like, for being a Democrat, people are yelling hate stuff at you. And I don't remember in the past ever being yelled stuff at just for having a sign up, you know? So I feel, in my limited personal experience, and granted this is just one example, that yes, it has gotten more toxic. So what do you think, Debbie?
Well, I agree it has too, and the thing is, you cannot control what other people see and hear
I'll
in
have
the
to call you
media
back.
and how they respond to it, you know?
That's true.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, you can encourage people to follow the laws, to do things legally, and, you know, as far as, you know, what people yell out, and it honestly, it goes both ways, you know, and, yeah, you can't control other people's words and actions other than encouraging them to follow the, you know, follow the law and be respectful and be thankful. We live in a country where we can express our differences of opinions legally and peacefully, you know.
I'll put on my historian hat for that for just a second, and not to bring too much pop culture into it, but many people may have heard or seen the play Hamilton over the summer. But I say that a little bit tongue-in-cheek just to say that, you know, to your question, is it toxic, whatever that measure is? Undoubtedly, there is an increase in that. If it's hit a level to where you say it's like past a point of no return, or that it's just unrepairable, my optimistic side is going to say no, and I will present this as evidence in the sense of, if we see an issue out there and we want to address it in a positive way, we still have that ability. But going back to, you know, historic events where you had Senator Sumner attacked and beaten with a cane, and then supporters from the party that did that sent canes to the person that did the beating as a sign of we support that, and that's over 150 years ago that would have happened. So we've always had that, but we've also always had the ability to call out, our better sides and to say, what can we do to solve those issues? So I would definitely agree that unfortunately in the last several years there has been an increase of toxicity, but I would say that there's still the ability to get better and to get past some of that. And so once again, that's one of my main motivations to have this meeting, is to hopefully, I'm under no delusions that every member on our DFL side is going to say, hey, did you hear what our leadership said to the Independent and to Marshall Radio, and we saw that, and I was going to go out and damage the sign, and now I'm not. I don't have those misgivings that we're going to have that much pull in this meeting. But even if there's a few people that think, they are calling me out to express my views in a proper and a civically responsible way, then that's a win. And I think that's what we have to do, is to try to, as leaders of our parties and members of the community, try to encourage people to do the right thing.
And I think just to add final closing mark on that, this right here is exactly what Mr. Moore is speaking of, is both parties coming together for a positive change in what I think we're seeing as a negative environment with thefts and damage of these political signs. So this is a great step in that direction.
I have a question. On Saturday, I heard it was someone in a different town said that someone actually got arrested for stealing lawn signs. I was wondering, what is the consequences? And I suppose it depends upon the age, but if they're an adult, what's the consequences?
The consequences for a theft, it doesn't matter that this is a political sign. The underlying factor is it's a theft or it's a damage to someone's property. Okay, and in Minnesota, those levels of offense, whether it's a misdemeanor, gross misdemeanor, felony, are based on the value of the property stolen or damaged. Okay, so these signs, granted that they do add up, but they're relatively inexpensive when it comes to the threshold the state has. So these are misdemeanor level offenses. And under our rules, our laws, law enforcement can make an arrest on someone who commits a theft or misdemeanor level theft if it occurs in their presence. Okay, so if we witness it,
Okay.
we can actually take that person to jail and hold them to go to court. But in most situations, we're not going to be there, we're not going to witness it. And usually what's going to happen, if we are able to pinpoint who did it, we are going to either if this is an adult, now I'm talking about adults, we're going to send a report to your prosecuting attorney, and the suspect will be summoned to appear in court to answer for those crimes. It could also be a situation where we would issue a citation, which was essentially the same. And as a result, they're going to end up in court on a date that's set on the citation to answer for those crimes. If the person's a juvenile, under 18, the route's going to be more of a restorative justice type approach with probably community service or enrollment into the Circle program that they have here in Lyon County.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
As individual parties, do you kind of give an educational warning or whatever to your members, about warning them against stealing other people's signs or defacing them? And on top of that, what can citizens do to help curtail thefts and vandalism? Is there some things that they can do?
I heard one member, when I said the story earlier of somebody coming and getting a sign early on, one of our first pop-ups, they came and they got like 4 or 5 signs. They came back the very next week and said that all of our signs were gone the next morning, and you felt bad for him. And when he was getting his new signs, he told me, he's like, but I installed a floodlight right where they're at. So that seemed to make some good common sense. If you've got them in a poorly lit area, it might make it easier, more of a tempting target. So that's just one little anecdotal thing I could throw out that I heard from one member. Specifically, do we have any kind of formal thing we do? I don't think so. I think if the topic were to come up, obviously we would, support them, being civically, responsible, and we strongly condemn, any theft, any vandalism, any messing with anybody's, property or political signs.
And I think most people that put signs up on their lawn, are respectful of other people that put signs up on their lawn. It's just in my mind, it's thinking that people who steal signs are probably those who aren't out, trying to be proactive themselves by, putting up their own signs.
I kind of have a follow-up to that question towards the parties, but to law enforcement. And it makes me think of us like with, maybe our Facebook page with our statement, because we don't have any formal, announcement to people saying, here's, where we stand on this and this is what we encourage. But to law enforcement or the city of Marshall, to the question a couple back about what are the consequences, how is it dealt with? Is there any possible way to maybe on, a Facebook page or on a website page to where you say just a little temporary blurb for the season, say this has been an issue that we've been hearing from or hearing about, and here's just a little fact box on the most basic things to know about it. It might be a good thing for the public and to have access to that if they are frequenting a certain website or whatever, and just to have that visual reminder of saying we're aware of it, we look for it, that kind of thing.
Right, yep, and we can certainly do that. We do have a Facebook page now, the sheriff's office does, and we will certainly add some of that background info about the consequences of the thefts.
Are there particular popular targets? I mean, is it more signs with national, Biden, Trump, or is it local races, or there's no common trend? I'm just curious. Do you see any common trends as far as what's stolen or defaced?
Sure. I'll start with that, at least from what has been reported to us. It's been more of the national races. Mm-hmm. Over the years, though, it has been even local races. It's all levels. But this year, from what's been reported, I've noticed it's more of the national races that are being stolen or messed with.
That corroborates what I've been hearing too. Most people who have a sign stolen will say it's a Biden sign, or they had a Biden sign with an X, spray painted on it, whereas, maybe a Doria Drost or a Tina Smith sign was left alone. That was my experience.
And that would also jive with what you said earlier about our DFL pop-ups on Tuesday and then in Thursdays in towns around Marshall, that I can't think of once of anybody ever saying a specific name other than Biden. It's, one of our most popular is F. Biden, or there's been some worse, but it's almost always Biden. I can't think of a specific name there. And then another thing that Anita spoke to earlier that my heart sank a little bit when I saw it was, a sign. It's an anti-Trump sign with an expletive on it here in Marshall. And I thought, I don't know who that person is, but I wish I had a way to encourage them to choose a better way to express their support for Biden, if that's what it is, then, doing that. But so that's something good for you to know that those are out there, I guess, and good for us to know that there is a state statute that, even though kind of vague, addresses that.
Do you find the same in the GOP, that it's mostly the national signs that are targeted?
Yeah, a lot of times people say, hey, I've had 3 Trump signs stolen, and so far. But like I saw the Minneota police had posted where they found signs, and it was all the Republican candidates in a stash, And so in that case, they just stole all the signs, and it was multiples of each one, whoever had gone around and done that. But so I guess it's a little of both.
Well, yeah, because with our sign stealing, like I said, that guy that came to our pop-up the second week, I believe he told me all of his signs were stolen. But I would definitely say as far as the vitriol or the toxicity, it's definitely more towards the national candidates. But as far as sign stealing, I don't know if we have any kind of evidence that it's more this way or that way, but I know there's definitely Biden signs being stolen. But I know there's also, down ticket names being stolen too.
I guess the only other good thing, maybe just for educational purposes, just, what are the rules involving placement of political signs? And is there any limitations on what a sign looks like?
Yeah, I can start with that. A lot of cities and local jurisdictions will have ordinances that dictate how many signs, what the size of those signs are, and if you can have them at all. But there is a Minnesota statute 211B.045 that basically states any local ordinance governing signs is or becomes essentially unenforceable from 46 days before the primary election in a general election year, ranging through 10 days after the general election. So that's the state's window that they're saying you can put out any political signs or any type of signage you want in lieu in lieu of the local jurisdictions that maybe would normally prohibit that. And I did touch on before as far as where you can place them. There is ordinances, or excuse me, state laws that prohibit signs being posted in the right-of-way of a public roadway or on a state highway. A lot of communities also have local ordinances that will govern some of that stuff as well. Like a lot of communities will have a law or an ordinance that states you can't put a sign in the boulevard, meaning on the road side of your sidewalk, if you have a sidewalk. You know, the grass between the sidewalk and the road is kind of considered a boulevard, and some cities will not allow signs to be placed there. Or if you have a divided street where you actually have a grass boulevard down the middle of the street, like Whitney Street, I believe, here in Marshall. You can't put a sign, I don't believe, in the middle of that boulevard. So local ordinances will have some, local cities will have some ordinances governing that as well. State statute also prohibits posting up signage on utility poles or on trees or shrubs along the roadway, and you are not allowed to paint rocks or other natural artifacts with any type of advertisement. So those are some of the rules the state has in place.
But that varies by city, so maybe Minneota might have a little different ordinances, so you have to check with your local city
Right,
officials.
that's correct.
Okay.
You know, the state law governs some of it, but cities might have their own local ordinances, which could vary from city to city, so make sure you check with the jurisdiction that you're in.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer this, but a connected question to this issue. We recently had a discussion going, some members in our group were asking if you're a renter and your landlord goes out and just puts a political sign up that you don't support, is there any recourse for the renter there? What are the rights of the renter in that situation if that's like, you know, tough for them to see that sign and they're not supporting that candidate?
Right. I would have to do a little research, but I believe I did read, and this is just my memory, so don't take
Sure.
it as gospel here. I thought I read that the landlord can't do that.
Yeah.
That the renter has that ability, unless there's something in your lease agreement that
Yeah.
is going to speak to that.
Yeah.
That if you, as a renter, want to support one affiliation,
Sure.
and your landlord doesn't agree with you, my understanding is they can't come out and change that sign out. So, but that's-
City-wise or county-wise for like commissioners or people in the city, would you have a name to go to get any clarification on that? Because we in a group had people presenting evidence that seemed to support different, conflicting answers to that. We had a lot that kind of said what you said, that essentially it seems like the landlord can't do that, but we had others bring forward evidence that kind of made it seem more vague or more the other way that the landlord could do that.
Right. I would speak to the prosecuting attorneys for the jurisdiction you're looking at. So
Okay.
for Marshall, the Marshall City Attorney,
Okay.
which is Dennis
Simpson.
Simpson's office.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay.
Or if this is something out in Lyon County, it would be our county attorney's office.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Can a citizen, if they believe a sign is placed somewhere where it should be placed, can they take that sign down?
I think what I've heard you say, Mike, is if a citizen sees one where they believe it's not supposed to be, can they take it down?
Yes.
Is that what you asked? Okay. I would probably discourage that, just for the fact that as a citizen, you don't want to be accused of messing with someone's property or theft. If you do notice that, if you're comfortable with that person that owns the sign, maybe speak to them directly, or you can certainly call local law enforcement and we can educate whoever the sign owner is that maybe it's not in the proper location. And also, I want to backtrack a little bit when we're talking about where signs can be placed. They cannot be put on private property unless you have permission from the property owner. as well. So if you own, maybe some people have some empty lots around areas that are high traffic and they want to put signage out there, people have to get your permission as the owner of that empty lot to be able to put stuff on your property. So we've had that happen in the past too, so it's worth mentioning.
That's all the questions I have.
I'd like to go back to that toxicity question. I'm 64 years old, and from when I was little until now, toxicity in the United States is on the increase, and I think law enforcement would support that. It's what we've done is we've eliminated God from our lives and from our nation, and that can only lead to law breaking and immorality. And the only way that this is going to stop is if we return to God. And so I don't have much. It's just to do it ourselves, to say, well, we're going to be better. I don't think it's going to be successful. So we need to get back to God.
Unless anyone else has any questions, I just will maybe close by thanking everyone for inviting myself and having this meeting. I think it was a good educational piece, because this information I think does need to get out, that there are consequences for stealing someone's property. And you may not realize, or people may not realize, these signs do cost somebody money. Depending on the race, sometimes it's the candidate themselves that are buying the signs and seeking permission to place them in people's yards. Other times it's the person that's displaying the sign that is purchasing it from an organization to be able to post that in their yard. So someone is paying for this property, and we do need to respect it, even if it goes against what you may personally believe.
Yes, I'd
Thank
like
you.
to thank Dana for putting this together. And it was nice to come together. I learned a lot, things I didn't know. So it was a good event. Thank you, Dana.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys and thank you very much to the media for your willingness to come and cover this. We really appreciate it. So hopefully this message can get out and hopefully encourage people to think about it and be more informed and make good decisions moving forward.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.